Welcome to Forge and Eternum, where we talk about all things.
All right, guys, we're going to watch this Forged in Eternum Balance of Power July 2023 edition. This is going to be in terms of upcoming changes towards the middle/end of Season 2 and into Season 3. I did watch it a couple days ago. It's not entirely fresh in my mind, but we're going to watch it back now. I'm going to kind of pause it throughout, give my thoughts and my analysis on it, kind of, what these changes may, do for us on New World. So let's get it rolling. And like I said, if I pause it, I'll just kind of talk over kind of what I'm thinking, how that may affect the game. So let's see what they got to say.
New World. Today we have another episode of Balance of Power. It's actually episode 5. Today we're going to talk about the Season 2 balance and any adjustments we might be making now that we've seen Season 2 live a little bit for our monthly balance patch. So take it away with some questions, Michael.
All right, so overall, how are you feeling about balance? Let's break it down per mode and start with OPR.
I think OPR is...
So I want to say, this is tough for them. Any MMO, once you start balancing between different forms of PvP and PvE, it's very, very difficult to have like perfect balance, right? Because you're going to have OPR, 3v3s, War, all three of which are completely different game modes and can be fought completely differently. So you have 3 different PvP game modes, and then you have PvE, right? You have your dungeons, your competitive like speed running dungeons, and then you have the raids, which are similar but a little different as well as far as compositions and stuff. So it's definitely difficult to it's definitely very difficult for them to balance between all three. And that's with any MMO, not just New World. Any MMO always has to like battle that balance. So let's see. I'm curious to see going into Season 3 when they start to remove Bane and Ward off of gear, kind of how they continue balancing. But I do think for right now it is fairly balanced. I think there's a few things that are still a little strong. Uh, but I think for the most part, New World is in a pretty balanced state. But let's continue.
sort of a tale of two cities type thing. There's some good news and some bad news. The good news is I think weapon balance is actually in a really good place. What we're seeing is very even distribution of weapons used. Almost every weapon is used, and it's used in very equal rates. We're seeing win rates all very close to each other. I actually think within 1.1% from best to worst weapons, so best balance by far. Damage is also pretty good. There is a little bit of an advantage for ranged in terms of damage, but kill distribution looks good.
I don't know if I completely agree with that. I think, obviously bow and fire, staff and musket are slapping people right now, but I don't think people are utilizing the right click tech as much. You can legit, especially like Warhammer Greyhammer, Warhammer Great Axe players, they can hold right click and just mitigate so much damage from ranged weapons right now. Obviously, that's not realistic in every situation, but in a lot of situations, you can do it and pull it off and mitigate a lot of damage. So I think once people start right-clicking more often, especially in like OPR, you'll start to see the ranged weapons not feel as great. I mean, obviously they're still good, but there's more counterplay in the game to them than there was previously, and I think that's not being completely utilized yet. So as more people use it, I think it's going to feel a lot better. Because some people probably disagree with this. They say, "Oh, whoa, ranged weapons are just slaughtering us." What do you mean? Well, there's more counterplay. Start to utilize it, and then let me know. Um, so yeah, I do think that although their damage is still nice, I think that there's a lot more counterplay for it that a lot of people just aren't used to yet.
Overall, weapon balance I think looks really, really good. With that said, though, I do think there are some issues. I think we've all played it, and there are some stops sometimes. And I think what we're seeing is that the distribution of quality matches is wider than we want. We want all matches to feel great, right? Like you've all been in those where it goes to like 99 versus 1,000, and it's like an epic Baroness capture like changes it. But we are seeing some on the other side.
Yeah, those ones are
and
nice.
I think it's not a balance problem. It is a matchmaking problem. And we
It
are
is
aware
nice
of
that
this.
they're
We talked a little bit about this
acknowledging
in the
that.
community Q&A. We are starting to think about the balance and work on it, but it is a big problem. It's technical.
Yeah, I feel like it's
design.
going to
There's
take them a
lot of
long
them.
time
So,
to get that
we're
smoothed
working on it, but
out.
it's going to take a little while to get it out to players.
And
I would
what
say
about
probably summer of
arenas and war?
2024 would be my guess.
In terms of arenas, we're seeing pretty good distribution in weapon usage also. I think there's some that aren't
don't
being
think
used
so.
a ton. Musket, for instance, is not used a ton in arena. I just don't think there's enough range to really capture the benefits of that weapon. We're seeing Void Gauntlet not super used.
Yeah,
and
yeah. No, I think this is. I think he's a little off on here. I think in arena, you see Sword and Shield with either Spear, Hatchet, or Greatsword. You see Fire Staff with either Ice Goblet, Rapier, or Blunderbuss, and then you see Bow with Rapier. Those are your main builds that you're seeing. Anyone else is just queuing to get their like stamp for the day. You know what I mean? They're not like chain queuing arenas to compete. They're just going in, getting their one arena win for the day, or trying to, and then they're moving on.
Surprisingly, Blunderbuss is not that used because it's actually doing pretty well. In terms of win rates, it's relatively well distributed. There's two builds that are sort of have higher win rates than sort of like the
Sword
deviation
Shield
we'd want. We'll talk a
Fire
little bit
Staff.
about those. And in terms of performance, I think damage and kills all look relatively well distributed. Nothing outlining that we're too concerned about. But in terms of builds, we are seeing a little bit more strength from the Fire Staff Ice Gauntlet build than some of the other builds. And a new and up and comer is Sword and Shield and Spear. We're seeing it being played a lot more since the Season 2 patch, and we're seeing the win rates of that go up. So that's something we've definitely got our eyes on.
All right, so any general combat balance updates planned for the monthly balance patch?
Yeah, this one's juicy.
Yeah,
here.
there's three. The first one is interesting because it's actually the result of a bug. If you played at the start of the season, you'll have remembered that Hale and Hardy, we were removing that town buff and replacing it with the HP increase. But a couple people got both. And I was actually one of those people also when I played. And I played a couple matches, and I think the overwhelming feedback from people who got both was that the game felt better with a little more HP. That time to kill felt more appropriate. It helped fight some of the burstiness of some of the combos.
It's a tough
It
one.
helped fight some of the ticking damage of some of the weapons, and in general, it just played better. So we are going to be making some adjustments to HP in Season 2. We're still finalizing how we're going to do that. I think we're going to do it like when you invest early on in Con, you'll get a little more HP.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the best way is, put it at like a mid-threshold point in con. That way, people have to at least put a little bit of con into it, and then you capitalize, you get more out of it. So, yeah, it is a tough one to do. I just hope they do tie it to con. Because there are times to where it's like, okay, for example, say I did a 300 dex, 200 strength build. I've got an insane amount of stamina, so I can just dodge iframe, and I'm a glass cannon. I'm going to blow you up before you can kill me. Sometimes that con kind of holds you back, So I think it'd be nice to give con a little more love, to be honest. So we'll see how they do it. I just hope they do it right to where it doesn't get like crazy abused. But I would like to see a little more con. The only thing I worry about this, and they'll say this later on, is like with different changes to some of the bursting weapons and abilities, I just hope that we don't get into, how do I want to put this? Basically a meta to where people just aren't dying. You won't really see it much on like OPR, maybe a little bit in 3v3s depending on the comp, but I think in wars is where you'll really start to see the clumps just surviving longer until people find a way to kill them.
That'll also help people sort of move away from some of the glass cannon builds. So that is a change that we're pretty excited about.
I do like that. I feel like
second
there's not
change
enough
is a little bit drastic, but I think it's a healthy thing for the game. We're going to be swapping the 150 and 300 dex
100% agree with
attribute
this
bonuses.
change.
We think the
300
reduced
dex
cost
for a
of dodging
300 point
is
not
probably
really
one
as
of the
good as you
strongest
think because
ATBs,
everyone's
attribute
pumping
threshold
resilient.
bonuses. And we want players to
150
sort
dex
of
is just
invest
busted.
to really get there.
So good.
A third smaller change, but we think a good one. This one we're going to really try to get done for the monthly. There's a chance it doesn't make it because there's a large amount of data that has to change to make this happen. But it's we don't want the fortify buff to count towards invigorated
See, I
punishment.
don't
So,
entirely
that's
agree
something
with
we're
that.
looking to change
I
also.
get it. Like,
All right.
I
What
understand
about specific
the issue
weapons? Like,
there,
are there any changes
you know,
there?
because like
Like
light
starting
armor.
with sword and shield.
So fortified counting towards invigorated punishment. I understand why they want to do it, you know, because if you're in light armor, you pop a gemstone, you pop a oak flesh, you have fortifies on you. Half the time it's increased, not half the time, a decent amount of the time it's increasing the damage that you're taking instead of mitigating. Like it's just unreal. The armor that you gain doesn't mitigate the damage that they gain from invigorated punishment. Um, so making invigorated punishment basically a must-have on most setups on the ring. So I understand that, but I think it's going to drastically hurt the perk if it's not targeting fortifies, because fortifies are some of the uh, most common buffs on a target. A lot of abilities give you fortify on your own kit, plus the other kits that interact with you commonly give you fortify. So making all those fortify stacks no longer count, or fortify buffs no longer count towards invigorated punishment. Now, are you getting much value out of it? I don't know. So this is definitely something to kind of watch. Um, I'm definitely watching it, and I'm going to be doing some testing on it when it hits, just to kind of see how much value I'm gaining from Invig punishment at that time. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Time will tell. Like they said, it may or may not make it in this patch cycle, so we'll find out.
Shield.
So Sword and Shield, we do think is slightly overperformed.
Yeah, 100%. Sword and Shield is insane. First off, you have six. Here's the big issues with Sword and Shield. Here's the big issues. You have 6 weapon perks. Everyone else is rocking 3 weapon perks, which can account for a lot of damage, like bonuses. Sword and Shield has 6. With that, it is a left click centric build, right? So a lot of the build strengths are based around just your light attacks. Has good tracking, good combination, good damage. Um, it's just a good left click weapon. And then its gap closers are great. It's just an all around very strong weapon, good perks, just a great weapon in general. So I do think but it's tough. Straight up, I think the offensive tree just needs reworked. Um, in my opinion, if I had my way, if I was a New World, Amazon Game Studios dev, what I would do, straight up, I would make the left tree ultimate, boost the one-handed damage for Sword and Shield, but make you drop the shield. So that way you no longer have um, 6 weapon perks. Make you drop the shield, and then gain additional bonuses, so that way you're not down an item. You're not using just a sword, right? So I would do some sort of rework, so that way it's healthy, and you're not rocking 6, because that's the thing that's crazy, man. Rocking those 6 perks does so much for you. Especially they add a shield in that's literally keen, vicious, enchanted. So now I can force attunement, rogue, and a weapon perk on my sword, and I have so many. I mean, it's wild. You could, you know. Anyways, yeah, I do think this weapon combination is just busted. I think some of the weapons, its stat being strength dex, being able to get 150 dex easily from more dodges. Some of the strength perks are really strong at those lower tiers as well for this specific weapon. I just think this kit and what you compare it to is very bloated. Um, for a lot of different like small man PvPs, so arenas, OPRs, war obviously doesn't perform as well. Um, in terms of the offensive side, the defensive tree though does have a pretty valuable position at war. But yeah, I think the offensive side is just bonkers at what it does.
Performing, especially at high level PvP. It's got a great combination of a gap closer, a really powerful stun, pretty good damage, and the stickiness of it is really strong. So that combo is making it really strong. I think what we're planning to do for the monthly patch is take a look at the Achilles heel passive and
I
move
think this
that
is a good
from
change.
slowing
Honestly,
down
I
the
think
enemy
this is a
to
really good
rending them. I
change.
think that'll help fight the stickiness.
So you got to
We,
think. So with that change, right? It's no longer applying slows; it's applying a rend instead. I think it's a great change because the slow and with the nerfs to 150 dex being moved to 300 dex, I think I think it's a good start to kind of see where will it be.
Are also aware of a bug with concussive bash and how freedom is not impacting it.
Now
Unfortunately,
there's a
it's a
few
pretty
perks. There are a few perks that have the same interaction, and I'm sure they're well aware of it. But as he says, it's just way too much coding for them to do without breaking stuff in the game.
tricky bug with some code in a dangerous code path. So we're not going to make that change for the monthly, but it is on our radar and will likely be fixed for season 3.
All right. Well, what about the other melee weapon that's getting a lot of play, the spear?
The spear, yeah. Now the spear is an interesting one. Like I said, it's become very popular, especially comboed with sword and shield
Yeah, this is
in
tough.
arenas. That's been strong. It's also getting some play in OPR, and it's interesting because it also complements dex builds like the bow really well. We've buffed this weapon a couple times in the last 2 seasons, and I think people are catching up with all the buffs and finding out how to get more power out of it. I think Cyclone in specific is we think a little bit too strong.
Yeah,
It's
100%.
AoE, it has grit, it has good damage, and it has a huge slow. I think that's just a little too much. What we're probably going to do.
Not only that, it also gives you stamina back for targets hit. So you could play aggressive, and if you have the Leeching Cyclone perk on your spear or on your armor, you can play aggressive. Once you get low in stamina, you start getting lower on health. Boom, you pop Cyclone, you heal, your stamina's back. Now you're back in the fight again. And the way the spear is set up, you get your cooldowns back so quick, and its base cooldown is already low. So you're literally just farming, man.
As a first pass is reduce the effectiveness of the slow from like 50% to 30%. And we're also looking at the Cyclone Leeching weapon perk upgrade. Right now, you can go into big clumps and like get all your life back. We'll likely limit the number of people that you can life steal from in one activation.
Yeah, I think that's
on that to help
necessary.
balance that out, so.
You look at other abilities that have like lifesteal, mending perks, mending execute, stuff like that. Most of those are limited to activation on, one target of, whatever. So I think, yeah, limit on that is good.
What about the fire staff?
Fire Staff's a tough one.
Yes,
I
it is.
think, slightly elevated win rates in OPR. In Arena. In OPR, it's doing fine. We are seeing a little more damage from it than other weapons, but the kills that it's receiving aren't, out of distribution. So it's doing a lot of damage, but not really moving the needle in terms of wins or kills. So we think it's in an okay place. We're going to keep an eye on it. Specifically, its damage over time. I think, between Kindle, the stacks that it's getting.
Yeah.
Again, the burning rings, like that combo is producing a lot of damage over time, and we've got our eye on it, but no changes planned for the monthly.
And the bow?
Bow is in the same place. I think Bow's in an even better place in terms of balance than Fire Staff. I think it's in a good place. We've all met the really good players that make the bow seem like it's broken, but those are really good players, and good players can do those sorts of things. But I think bow overall is in a good place.
Yeah.
We are aware of the bug with elemental
I
damage
do
not
agree with a lot of
getting
this.
damage fall off applied. That's something that, again, unfortunately is a little too risky to fix in a monthly. In monthlies, we try to stick to, data changes and very simple code changes. This actually is a somewhat complex code change. So we won't get it in for the monthly, but that is something we know is happening and will likely be fixed in season 3.
Well, what about the blunderbuss?
Our favorite little bursty weapon here.
I love this one. This was good.
There are some new combos that experts.
New? Come on now. These have been going on since the Blundy, like 2 months after the Blundy came out, right? Blundy came out in like March, and this stuff was pretty much end of April, early May of 2022. This stuff was getting used.
In quotations, if you know what I mean, are pulling off here with the blunderbuss. Those are things we did not anticipate as a part of the design, and it would not surprise me when you load up the monthly patch if those combos are no longer possible.
And last but not least, what about heart runes?
Heart runes detonate, we still feel is a little overpowered. I think what we're seeing here is spikiness in the heart rune detonate. Like on average, it's okay, but some people have setups which are causing it to proc for a lot of damage. And it's when they combine lots of empower, crit damage, crit bonuses. So I think what we're going to do, we don't want to change the base or the range because we like how it plays in general. But what we're going to do is eliminate the ability for this heart rune to crit. And we think that'll sort of normalize the distribution of damage and make this weapon feel still really strong, but not as spiky.
So everyone is kind of overreacting to this, in my opinion. So Resilient does not reduce the critical damage of Detonate, but 150 con does. Um, Truthfully, the Detonate critting and non-critting, I mean, yeah, it's more damage, of course, but you can still get some fat detonates from non-crits if you know what you're doing, right? Um, Knowing how to cleanse, pre-cleanse while you're detonating, making sure you're not, you don't have weakens on you, you don't have rends on you, and then also getting as many empowers as possible. Just playing smart. You're still, excuse me, you're still gonna have these fat detonates. I mean, detonate is not going anywhere. A lot of people think that it's gonna fall off. I still think it's not. I think one of the biggest things that may dictate the strength of, I don't want to say detonate, but clumps dying is going to be that health change that they were talking about with the con early on. So that I'm kind of curious about watching. Detonate, I'm not seeing it change too much. You don't really see too many people um, forcing like great sword forcing detonates around point. So you're not going to see like much on the clumps. Yeah, you'll see a little bit on like outside skirmishes, on healers, stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't think this is as big as people think it is. I think it's getting blown a little out of proportion. A lot of people are kind of panicking on this one, trying to find the next big answer. I think you're still going to have detonates as a big answer. Bruisers still have one of the best kits to set up detonate with just being rich on empower, um, and being able to kind of create their own clump, CC their own clump, boost their damage, 200 strength, more damage to slow targets, so you're already slowing them for yourself, plus whatever other debuffs are put on them. So I don't know, man. I still think that Detonate's going to be running rampant, at least in Wars. You might see some weird stuff pop up in OPR and 3v3s, but in War, I think that's still king.
So I did have a few questions from the community if you're up for that.
Let's go for it.
Great. So this is when I asked for the community Q&A questions, they had some for this. Are there plans to adjust underwhelming attribute breakpoint
This stuff
perks
is awesome,
alongside
what
the
he
other
says
perk
here.
adjustments for
I
Season
cannot
3?
wait for Season 3.
I would love to see some mana management incentives for intelligence builds and
Okay, whoever asked that, dodge. Have you not read the 200 int perk, right? 200 int, whenever you dodge, you gain mana. Like, bro, mana management incentives for intelligence builds, dodge.
block incentives for constitution builds.
So we don't want to give away too much about Season 3 yet. We're still focused on Season 2, but I
I think Season 3 is going to be massive, by the way.
think it's very fair to say that the ATBs, attribute threshold bonuses, will see major reworks. We will move things around. In fact, this dex change that we're doing in this monthly patch was originally planned for the Season 3. There will be other moves like that. We're going to be taking some of the bonuses that we don't feel are strong and removing them. And there's going to be some new ones. And then just a slight little hint on fun stuff coming up. There might even be a new level of
350.
ATBs and
Let's go.
another way to dip your toes in. So big changes coming to this in Season
excited.
3.
And can we expect to see further balance passes on some Fortify? The lack
Yeah,
of
that's a good
consistency has confused me, and some things like Fort Sacred and Shirking Fort still feel like they could use some tuning.
Yeah,
I think this one's tough for them, and I can't remember exactly what he says here, but I think it's tough because you got to think we're about to go into Season 3. There's going to be a gear score increase. They've already stated, so now you're going to have more armor on the gear. So Fortify inherently gets better because of the increase in armor on your equipment. So I am curious to see if they continue buffing it. I'm thinking they won't. I think he says they do a couple abilities, but I don't know. Let's see what he says. But yeah, I think the gear score increase in Season 3 makes Fortify a little tricky in Season 2.
I think there definitely are still some inconsistencies. I saw a really nice spreadsheet someone put together on this, and we're aware of this. I think we're going to be looking into this. I don't think it's going to make the monthly bounce patch. We've got a lot on our plate with Season 3, so it may or may not make it, but we're aware of it. We don't think there's any ones that are sort of really game breaking, which hasn't sort of pushed it to the top of the stack. But we will be doing a consistency pass on this, and also just sort of pushing up and down, mostly up, some of the fortifies that didn't get adjusted enough when we made the change to the fortify calculation.
Okay.
Well, I think that's it. I think we're good.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today on Balance of Power.
Cool. Yeah, I love these videos, man. Balance of Power, I'll definitely be doing a review of every time they pump one out. The Q&As probably not. The Q&As are a little more casual, a little less weapon balancing, PvP oriented. I love weapon balancing. Weapon balancing is like that's my thing, man. I live for it. Weapon balancing patch notes. When they release the patch notes for the August balance patch, I'll do a review of it. We'll go into it. Man, I cannot wait. I'm so excited. Um, but yeah, I mean, I just love crafting builds and just thinking about how it affects, the builds I'm already running, but future builds, stuff like that. So I'm super hyped for these patch notes. I think there's going to be a lot of positive changes. I think it's going to affect the game very positively. You're going to have a few people who are going to be Debbie Downers, especially like what's the word here? We'll just call them light assassins, right? These great sword, basically anyone who's abusing the strength and dexterity with 150 dex, like I think those guys are going to be a little upset because they're going to have to invest more into dexterity to get those cheaper dodges. So I'm excited. I'm excited, man. I think this is extremely healthy. It makes you invest to get those dodges, which are extremely overpowered. I mean, stamina is just a very powerful resource in New World. So yeah, I'm hyped for this. Everything I've read so far, I'm hyped. Everything I've or not read but heard rather from these balance of powers, I'm super excited. So cool. Well, guys, I appreciate you being here, man. If you want to see more stuff, I put out a lot of I have some YouTube shorts. I got some Bruiser videos. And I got more videos coming, different things, in the works. So if you want to get notifications whenever I'm popping those out, make sure you like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one, man. Thanks so much. Peace.